Today on Parenting for the Long Run, we look at an issue by I mean my wife and I, that many parents find frustrating, and that is, how do you get your kids to eat? So Laura provides some good insight into that. Hope you enjoy the video. Let's get started.
I'm all in. Push your chips to the middle. I'm all in for the cards as they may. I'm all in. Push your chips to the middle. I'm all in. Go broke or get paid.
Well, welcome back to Parenting for the Long Run. Today I have my wife back, and we were going to talk about a problem that seems to be commonplace among parents, and that is, how do you get your children to eat at mealtime? So I'd like to welcome my wife back. This is always easier when she's with me and I'm not just talking to the camera by myself. Before we get started, let's say a quick prayer, and then I will ask her some questions about how she managed to get our kids to eat so well at meals. Lord, we thank you for our children. We thank you for the marriages that you have blessed us with. I pray that you would be with us now, and that this would be honoring to you, and that it would be a benefit to those who listen. Amen. So, there's stages of this, obviously, and when you start with young kids, what age, when do they start sitting up to the table? Basically from like 1 to maybe 2.5, they're in a high chair. Is that something like that? I don't know.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so how did we get our kids to eat? This is a long time ago, so I don't remember real well, and our kids have varying memories of this. But what is your memory? I'm going to move my chair so I can look at you better.
My memory. Basically, we agreed on a little of everything that was on the table for dinner. To begin with, we didn't make them eat all their plate. I don't know, but they had to try a couple bites at least of everything. And we progressed from there. We always ate a well-balanced meal. And so they were being introduced to meats, pastas, breads, vegetables, whatever, fruit at the table, and with the emphasis being on whatever the main dish was. You know, we didn't just let them focus on the fruit or focus on, the meat. They were expected to sample the entire variety. And then as they grew, there were other expectations that were placed upon them.
So I remember with Rachel, who's our oldest, she would ask if she could be excused, and oftentimes I would look down and I'd see she hadn't eaten all of her food, and I might say, okay, well, take 3 more bites. And, being the smart kid that she was, she would say, how about 5? Say, you drive a hard bargain, okay, 5. So that may say something about our math training, but she would typically take those and then get down, right?
In the early stages, we didn't require them to finish a plate. We tried to put reasonable portions out there, and like I said, we expected them to try everything, and then I just,
And I think probably the thing that we should have said at the beginning, I'm kind of throwing this a curveball with Laura here because I didn't talk to her about this ahead of time, but part of the issue, I think, with kids not eating is they are just kind of generally, oftentimes, unthankful. And so starting out with a prayer, thanking God for the food, I think is a good first step. For one thing, it kind of sets the tone for the meal. Everybody knows that they're not going to start eating until their prayer is said. And so you're sitting down as a family to eat and share conversation together. And so that, I think, sets the stage for the meal.
Yeah, I would agree. And we also didn't snack a ton. You know, the younger kids snack some in between meals, but we didn't do a ton of snacks during the day, and snacks were required to be fairly healthy snacks. They, pretzels, fruit, yogurt. They weren't eating a bunch of junk, and they didn't have another option if they didn't eat dinner. You know, there wasn't anything else until breakfast. So we didn't let them go back to the table after the meal. And sometimes if dinner wasn't completely eaten, then it became their lunch the next day. But yeah, there were those principles, I think. And making them try everything. Part of the reason I think you have finicky eaters is maybe today they don't like peas, so you just don't give them peas ever again. Or they might not like it next week either, and people just quit. We always put it out, and like I said, they were expected to try it. There are some things that, sometimes it's a texture thing. We have several kids that can't stand tomatoes. It's the texture. They don't like the squish of those seeds in their mouth when they bite into a tomato. They like spaghetti sauce. They like ketchup. They'll eat pizzas and lasagna. They just don't like the texture of tomatoes. And those are hills you're never going to get over. And that's perfectly okay. But they still were required to try things even for a long period of time, not just
one time, and then they didn't like it. We gave up.
Yeah. And when, like, I had a niece who, I don't know, for years had about 5 foods that she ate, and that was it, because my sister just didn't require her to eat a whole lot outside of that. And eventually she did start requiring more, and she started becoming a better eater, but she was extremely finicky when she was little. And it, like I said, to get them to eat well, you have to do it, put it out there more than once, and require a couple bites every time that it's put in front of them. And there's 2 things to that. One, people develop, your taste is a developing thing. And so sometimes it's just, maybe they don't like it, but eventually they will. Or, again, sometimes textures are the problems. And so, yeah, we didn't force the kids to eat all the mushrooms if it was a texture thing. Sometimes the way you present it, too, might be different. Like with mushrooms, a canned mushroom's not that great, but if you saute it, the texture's suitable. So there are different things that you can try to assess as to why they're not really liking it, and it might be just the presentation. And by requiring them to continually try things, not only do you develop a sense of taste, but there's a thankfulness that comes in that too. Our kids were always thankful for whatever meals I put on the table. They would always thank me after they'd eaten and, before they got down. It was, they asked to be excused, and then they would turn and thank me after they'd been excused. So that was something they did from the time they were little, and they still do it as adults. When they're home, they always thank me for dinner, and it doesn't matter whether it's their favorite meal or their least favorite meal. It taught them to be thankful for what had been put in front of them. So,
yeah, so I was talking to one of our sons about this, and he said it seemed like at some point we started requiring the kids to finish their plates. But we didn't initially do that, but usually they would finish their plates. I mean, our family is notorious isn't the right word, infamous is the wrong word, well known for cleaning their plates. And it wasn't like we were giving them small portions. Typically, I would serve the main dish, at least if it was pasta or something like that, lasagna, and then they would get their own salad and bread, whatnot. But oftentimes I'd get in trouble because I would serve guests the same size that I knew my kids would finish, and the guests were just like overwhelmed by the size of the portion. So it wasn't that we were feeding them small portions. They were just good eaters because they got, as my dad used to say when he would come to visit, it gets real quiet here at dinner time. These kids know what they get up to the table for. Well, they were hungry and they ate. And so that kind of brings up, there's two reasons why kids develop an appetite. One is caloric expenditure, and the other is a lack of caloric intake. So as Laura pointed out, if your kids are always snacking, or if they're drinking sodas all the time, then when they get up to the table, they're not going to be all that hungry. Or if they are just sitting in front of, I don't mean to offend anybody here, but it's kind of the world we live in. If they are just sitting in front of a video screen, just, with little drool stalactites coming out their mouth as they play some video game, they aren't going to have a great caloric expenditure, and so they're not going to be all that hungry. And our kids, even if they weren't playing outside, which they did a whole lot, they were generally like making forts, wrestling with one another, having sword fights, all of those activities where they were being rambunctious, and that developed a considerable appetite. Mm-hmm. And the other thing it did, they weren't thinking about eating snacks because they weren't bored. They were busy playing. A lot of times, again, to quote my dad, he says, well, in America, if we run out of things to do, we can always eat again. And a lot of times snacking is just done out of boredom. I need to do something. Well, maybe I'll go get a snack. So trying to limit the snacks, I think, is a key component. And Laura mentioned that we would sometimes say, okay, well, if you can't finish that plate, then that's going to be what you eat for lunch. And we didn't always follow through on that, but generally I think we did. And they realize, okay, well, I'm going to be out of options here. At some point, I'm going to have to finish this plate. And so that tends to make them less finicky. But we had one of our granddaughters who didn't finish her meal when she was visiting with us, and then she came back and wanted a snack later. It was like, no dice. You didn't eat your meal, you don't get a snack. Now, some people will say that that is mean, but, no kid is going to suffer any deleterious effects by missing a meal in the United States. It's just...
Well, she didn't really miss it. She just didn't eat it all.
Right.
So,
but even if you miss it, in the United States, we eat so much that if you miss one meal, it's not going to harm you. But it will teach you a lesson. Oh, hey, the reason why I'm so hungry is because I didn't eat lunch and mom or dad refused to give me snacks because of that fact. And those lessons are important because it teaches kids, hey, this is when we eat. And we eat whatever is on the table. Now, it's funny, the big kids were aghast when they learned of this. We have our kids. We have the big kids, the middle kids, the little kids. I was sitting at the table one time working on my computer, and our youngest son must have been, 5 or 6? Yeah. And he says, he asked me, Dad, are we having salad tonight? And I said, probably, go ask your mom. And he said, what's that day that comes after Sunday? I said, Monday? He goes, can we make that no salad day? So sure, what the heck? Because we had because I like salad, we had salad at every dinner. And he was tired of salad, and so he was trying to see if he could get some concessions from me that we not have salad one day a week. Okay, that's fine. That's reasonable. I eat what I want to eat, and it's kind of natural that kids would eat what they want to eat in some cases. All the big kids were like, what? You got away with that? We had to eat salad all the time. Well, you should have asked, I guess. And besides, I like him better than I like you. So I think those are important factors in that. There was something else. Oh, there may be times, I don't know that we had any allergy-related finickiness.
no.
But there may be times when a child doesn't like something because they have an allergy to it, and they don't realize they have an allergy. All they realize is their body's telling them, hey, don't eat this. And so that may be an issue you have to deal with. I think that's probably overblown in our society, but it does exist sometimes. I've been amazed that I used to run ultra marathons, and Laura helped out in some of those back in Virginia, and they would always have these aid stations that had all sorts of food. And I was amazed when I would go up to an aid station that I knew exactly what I needed to eat. My body just somehow told my brain, hey, this is what we need to eat. And so your kids may be that way too at times. We actually had that experience with our kids. A friend of mine, we had a Bible study with a dinner, and he had brought some hot peppers, and they were too hot for him. And he said, oh, no, Philip will like these. And so he'd sent them home with me. And like the next day or a couple days after, I came down with a flu bug, and I looked at those peppers, and I was like, I have to eat some of those. And I ate quite a few of them. The next day, or whatever the incubation period was, Gabriel and Michael came down with that flu bug, and they looked at those peppers and were like, we have to eat some of those. So there may be some of that involved on the other side, that you might have kids sometimes look at things and they're unappetizing to them because there's a physiological reason. But I think that that is the exception, not the rule.
Mhm. Yep.
Let's see. Anything else? How about desserts? Did we do desserts?
We did occasionally, not every day, but we would do pies. We're not a big cake family, but occasionally, maybe for like your birthday or something, we have a chocolate cake. But mostly pies or sometimes cookies. We had cookies or brownies occasionally. So there were some desserts available, and ice cream was occasionally available. That wasn't something that was every night. But if kids wanted dessert, they did have to eat. They didn't get dessert if they didn't eat their dinner. And when we were dishing up their dinner, again, reasonable proportions. There were some times when the kids would go, "Dad, I'm full." And Phil would realize that he had given them more than, he gave the 2-year-old what he should have given the 10-year-old. And it's like, "Well, I gave you a lot, buddy. Okay, you can be done." And we didn't require them to save it till tomorrow or do any of that, because we realized that we had overdone it. As kids got older and were taking their own portions, putting them on their plate, we always told them, you can always go back for seconds. You don't have to take. So trying to teach them to take reasonable amounts themselves and not just heap it on. As my dad always used to say, your eyes were bigger than your stomach. So trying to teach them to do that. And one of the reasons when they were kind of little that we didn't always require them to clean everything on their plate, I didn't want to teach them to forcefully overeat. If they were legitimately not hungry, making them take those extra 5 bites to finish the plate or whatever didn't seem like a great idea to me. If they had eaten well, tried everything, again, just some days you're hungrier than others, and we evaluated the proportions that we had given them or whatever, but we didn't. They were quite a bit older before we required them to finish the plate. Yeah, like I said, we tried to push that for that reason as well, just teaching kids to eat more than and they need it. It's okay to sometimes say, "I'm full and I can't do this." So.
And another thing, Laura won't bring this up, but I will, that encouraged our children to eat was Laura made such good meals. I mean, they were flavorful meals. They were, she used plenty of spices. She added an appropriate amount of salt. All of those things factored into our kids enjoying the meal and savoring the dishes. And I know this to be true because they would invite their friends over for meals, and almost without exception, I can think of one exception, those friends would rave over Laura's cooking. And so kind of the moral of that story is you can either have Laura come cook your meals, which probably isn't going to work, or you could just make sure that when you cook, you're putting effort into it and trying to make the meals taste good. And that doesn't mean a lot of sugar. It just means appropriate spices and salt. And I know there's people who are very concerned about salt, some rightly, some wrongly. But salt, particularly with kids, I think is good because it just makes the food more flavorful. And I remember this fun fact from way back when I read it in the newspaper. When you're born, you have like 7,000 taste buds. And when you die, you only have like 2,000. Well, depending on when you die, of course. But as you age, the number of taste buds you have kind of diminishes. And so children are probably, because of that, much more attuned to tastes than we as adults are, I suspect. But if you make your dish flavorful, then that too would increase the likelihood that they're going to eat. Very few times did I ever taste one of Laura's meals and then say, yeah, honey, I don't think we need to make the kids eat much of this. There was only a handful of times when that occurred. Anything else on how to get kids to eat?
Nope, I can't do it to me.
I mean, this is a discipline like any other discipline, right? So if I am trying to get athletes to run, if in my coaching across country, I start them out. I don't make them go out and run a 3K right out of the gate because they'll just get discouraged and quit, right? So I work them up to that. Here, run for 3 minutes. We're going to do some exercises, run another 3 minutes, do some exercises, run another 3 minutes. Okay. That may be all we do basically in the first day. But we work them up to the point where they can run a 3K and do well at it and enjoy it. Same thing with eating. As Laura alluded to, your tastes can be developed. If you are used to, as a family, kind of eating junk food and you want to improve that and you're finding some resistance from your kids, well, part of that is because their taste buds are used to junk food. But if you continue the effort to introduce these healthier foods, then their tastes will change. I've seen that with myself. I've seen it with our kids, and I've seen it with other people. So it's not necessarily easy. When I say it's not easy, it is not complicated, right?
Right. It just takes consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, and don't be discouraged if, it takes a few months because it's like anything else. Like you said, you kind of work up to it. You train for it. So,
hang in there.
Yeah. I would say when we talked about giving them their plate for dinner, lunch the next day or whatever, I would definitely not recommend if you gave them Cheerios for breakfast, making them eat it at lunch. I tried that once. Didn't go over. I was so grossed out even.
Never mind.
So kind of be aware of what you might be asking them to say.
Yeah. Yeah, there is something about parenting, you have to choose your battles.
And we tried not to make food a battle. The dinner table was not a place to have a fight. As you said, it was a place we came together. We talked about the day we visited with each other, and we enjoyed a meal together. And it was always congenial. Yeah, you do. You don't want the dinner table to be the battle zone. So, and reasonable expectations of the kids, and just stick with it and persevere.
Yeah. And fathers, you will kind of set the tone for mealtime. So keep that in mind. If you are, being thankful, which I wasn't all the time, and if you're asking the kids questions or responding quickly when they ask you a question, then that time is going to be enjoyable. And that too is going to make the meal more appetizing, because it's part of the whole ambiance. I ate, best ice cream I ever ate was in Florence, Italy. I have no idea if the ice cream was any better than ice cream anywhere else, but it was in Florence. And so that kind of made, I suspect, the ice cream taste better. Same thing with the meals. If it's an enjoyable time, the food is going to be much more enjoyable. So, all right. Anything else? Closing comments?
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us on this episode of Parenting for the Long Run. I hope this was helpful. If you have questions or comments or things that you have tried that have helped to get your kids to eat, you could leave those in the comment section. Be sure to like this podcast, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so that you get notified when we come out with an update. Thank you.